Hello there, and welcome to Weird Music on the Glumberger channel. The weird show, that looks at our albums each and every week, right? Well, today we have a really great one for you today, I think. Today we are finally going to be discussing The Residents on Weird Music. So the randomizer has chucked out Wireless Fiction 8636's suggestion of Duck Stab by The Residents, which was suggested well over a year ago, it seems, so a little bit out of date, goodness me. But to be fair, I've been meaning to check out The Residents for so long, actually sit down and listen to The Residents properly for some time. But they're just one of those bands where I really have to be in the right vibe to listen to them, I feel. Just silly enough to appreciate the bizarre nonsense that's constantly occurring in their music. So we're finally going to be discussing, The Residents, one of the most strangest bands in existence, I feel. So I have to say, I'm very excited about this. Today I present Duck Stab by The Residents. Well, usually we start off these videos by asking whoever wins, but I think with The Residents though, anonymity is the key, right? Part of the presentation and aesthetic of the band from my research into them, showcases a band who have, kept it all shrouded in mystery as, to the identity of the particular members. Performing, live concerts in masks and costumes and never revealing any details regarding identity or who was behind the project at all. And instead just letting the music kind of speak for itself, and as well those bizarre performances. I should say though, over the years since The Residents' inception, there have been so many little bits and pieces, and various pieces of the puzzle that so many people have been connecting over the many years. But it seems that the only confirmed member of the band was tragically the late Hardy Fox, who passed away from brain cancer in 2018. Aside from that, though, we actually don't really know who else we're dealing with, apart from, a few suspicious individuals who we think it might be, apparently. But I think in regards to that kind of deep diving, I'm going to leave that to the experts who know and love The Residents and probably have done hour-long dives into this kind of weird rabbit hole. For me, I like to just talk about the music and how it makes me think and feel and stuff, so that's what we'll be doing today. So Duck Stab, or Duck Stab Buster and Glenn, which is also known as, this is apparently the fifth studio album from The Residents, released originally in 1978. And so originally comprising of just the EP Duck Stab, the album apparently quickly sold out for The Residents, which was apparently unusual for them, which prompted them to re-release the album with the addition of Buster and Glenn occupying the B-side of the album now. And so what we essentially have here is two different EPs that have been smushed together to create two halves of a whole album, or however really you want to describe it. And it all results in incredibly weird experimental, just wonky, amusing music, backed up by what I can only describe as cartoon voice acting over the top of it all, telling us the most unusual stories set in the most unusual of places. It's just so incredibly weird, right? People who know The Residents know that weird is an injustice. It just genuinely is so bizarre and peculiar. And what I like though is how The Residents sometimes straddle that line between commerciality, commercially viable music, which they then of course just immediately contrast it with just strange and weird oddities that make no sense and are very just bizarre in their own right. It's an incredibly entertaining trip that, it's a bit difficult for me to describe properly, but I'm going to do the best I can. So let's dive into it, shall we? And so, as soon as Duck Stab starts, already it's just weird, isn't it? You're just getting off tones, weird musical palettes, and then he just starts singing in this really unusual, with this really unusual afflection in his voice though. Here comes Constantinople, blah, blah, blah. It's just so wonky, weird, and really silly sounding is the thing. But I think it's awesome though, like there's something about the way in which these songs present themselves, you know. They're incredibly unusual structures and unusual musical notions, you know. It just comes across so wacky and strung out and like just cartoon characters just occupying the scenes, making fun of the main characters, whoever they may be, I guess. Oh goodness. But I should say, in regards to Constantinople though, this is actually a song I'm a bit more familiar with when it comes to the Residents' repertoire. All I have really heard from the Residents is the debut album of Meet the Residents, until, of course, reviewing this very album we're looking at today. But prior to having heard Meet the Residents, I had heard the track Constantinople before, as I remember first hearing of them when I was first checking out the band Les Georges Leningrad, a weird Canadian experimental DIY punk band who released the albums on Alienate Records. On their very debut album, Du Hot Dog Mukar Shu, released in 2002, they had a cover of Constantinople, which in their own weird way was just bizarre and wonky and stuff. But as a result of hearing it there, I then went out and checked The Residents, and I had no idea what was going on. This was so many years ago. But hearing it here in, guess what is actually the proper context, it's a lot of fun, I have to say, and it's a perfect catchy opener for this really unusual, bizarre affair. And so, next song, Sinister Exaggerator. Sinister's definitely the correct word, I would say. With that really bouncy bass line punctuated by that low-end twang, the rest of the instruments just dance around with these high-pitched squeals, and it sets the scene for what exactly? Apparently, just some oddly strung out violins that stretch and pull into weird contorted shapes, sounding almost like vocals. Maybe it is, it's hard to tell. Maybe that's the point with the band, just not knowing what's going on at any point. But then again, as weird as it all gets, this one also presents us with another weird vocal performance, of course. But what I like is how the lyrical portion of this all, you get these backing vocals playing the tune of sorts, sounding to me like the multitude of different characters you get in old cartoons, all singing in unison and kind of thing. Once again, maybe it's just voices and stuff, it's very hard for me to tell, but I just like that silly cartoon vibe. It's going to come up a lot in this one. And so, next track, Booker T's, which is this the opening theme for some forgotten show that once aired in the 70s about some down on his luck detective, wandering the empty cul-de-sacs for the villain, maybe? Doubtful. But it's the vibe that this incredibly short interlude gives me. It's what I like a lot about the Residents, how, being such phenomenal musicians, they paint these really amazing brief little stories in such a short space of time. But with all the different details and the sort of ambience and mood of the music, you just get a vision of exactly what it is they're trying to present, I feel. Moving swiftly along, though, we get the next track of Blue Rosebuds. Now, this is, without a doubt, weird, though, apparently. I'm kind of reminded of the Beatles with this one, which, it makes a lot of sense to me, considering how the band does like to poke fun at them from time to time. Just look at the album cover for Meet the Residents, of course. But on this one, though, it's all just plodding along at a very gentle pace, offering a slightly psychedelic landscape that becomes the more and more weirder the more that you explore around. And then from out of nowhere, the most surprising cartoon character suddenly just explodes out of nowhere, just scolding you, it feels, sounding so, just terrifyingly aggressive almost. It's so weird, but I adore the performative aspects of it. It's a very clearly defined character in the way that it's being presented, especially vocally and stuff. And I have to say, with the way all this combines together, this is, perhaps one of the favourite of mine off this album. So inherently strange and weird, but there's something really fun, comical, and cartoonish about it all. And so we then move along to Laughing Song. No, seriously, this one is great, I feel. This one, to me, it's just like early Primus, I feel, you know, especially following on from the first set of laughter, and then you just get that vocal performance. I just love how silly this one is. It just revels in the comedic aspect of strange and bizarre landscapes supported by those instruments. And they're all playing such weird notes that feel, I think, slightly atonal at times, just pushing the entire thing into an uncanny valley type of vibe. Super strange, but it's marvelous and so delightful as a result. And then, moving on to another favourite of mine, Bach is Dead. Another really fun one. Weirdly strangled notes, pianos, and the vocal phrase repeating constantly of Bach is dead. It's a really fun loop that, you know, feels weirdly textural again, especially with how all those instrumental layers, you know, kind of pass the baton around to one another for these brief little phrases. And this one, I guess in terms of the theme, reminds me a lot of Bruce Willis's Dead by Mr. Wazo. Though this one feels a lot more detuned, a much more terrifying soundscape with its, you know, terrifying scrapes and screeches and bouncy keyboards. It's really fun and amusing though, and it's a perfect little interlude of sorts, you know. As short as it is, it once again just paints such a vivid and detailed picture, and as a result, another one of my favourites of this thing. We then move on to what is the last track of Duckstab, Elvis and His Boss. The instrumental solo from hell, as I've described it here. It sounds like a little bit like a guitar, but one that is playing only the wrong note. It opens fantastically, so leading the way to another comedic vocal performance once again that just inhabits the strangers in such a delightful way. And I love as well how this one just devolves into this weird march of squealing atonal carnival music of sorts, spinning around and around and around and around and getting louder and louder and more tumultuous and bigger and demented and crazy, and before just falling apart into this spectacular audio crash at the end where everything just falls into pieces on the floor. An amazing ending track to this album, truly fantastic, I have to say. And so with that, we have essentially covered Duckstab by The Residents. Yep, according to how this album was originally released, that is the entirety of what makes up Duckstab, a fantastic whirling spiral into the zonked out cartoonish hellscape that only The Residents offer. Strange, uncomfortable music with really fun storytime vibes. Of course, we're not going to be stopping there, are we? Like, you can see that this video is much longer than this particular point. No, so as mentioned briefly before, Duckstab was re-released following the immediate sellout of that original EP. And we also have the second half, Buster and Glenn. Another side of just strange esoteric song choice to inhabit all over again. So let's continue this journey then, shall we? So we open up with Lizard Lady, which is a nice track of low ends and nice weird synths and, you know, those Saturday morning cartoon vibes once again. And with all those details, you know, that the instruments offer, it tells us another story that's, you know, in so many lovely sounding words as he just presents them in that weird natural performer way of expression, if that makes sense, you know, and it gives us very unsettling and peculiar vibes. But let's not forget, though, how really weird it gets when the character of the Lizard Lady talks, though, towards the end. I don't know why, but the way in which it babbles, it feels like a kind of intermittent character that would appear in the likes of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. You know, someone just so twisted and distorted and just not of this world, and just the lizard people, I guess, right? The next track, Semolina. Yes. This is a great song. This opens up with a sort of whole Animal Collective vibe, which, you know, I feel like after having heard Semolina, I think Animal Collective have a lot to owe up to, right? Maybe so. Then again, maybe The Residents are just weird like that in so many different ways. I find that when you listen to The Residents, you find so many links to, you know, more modern music because they were just so ridiculously ahead of their time in how they experimented with sounds, I feel. And this one just feels like spinning around and around again in demented carousel, blurring past with lights and colours, brief glimmers of horror and terror once again. It's a lovely little bit of story time, of course, punctuated by the weirdest and sounding catchy chorus of Semolina, you know, which is great, but I don't know why, it's so cool though. Like, it's funny that a song about Semolina is one of the most catchy. Like, it's really demented, don't get me wrong, but it's so cool and one of the most fun things on this whole album, I feel. Where to from here though? Birthday Boy version 1. And so, from the immediate side of this one, I guess this is like the original precursor for something like Spinning Plates by Radiohead, right? Weird reversed effective vocals and sort of, weird percussion and lowercase instances and drones and things. And then just when you think, that experimental style is what we're going to be inhabiting, did you forget it's your birthday? You're the birthday boy. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you, birthday boy. And from there it devolves further and further into, this really weird horror show once again, before you get those Primus vibes, more story time and fun with, weird funny cartoon characters. And I love how, I just love how he tells the story with these weird cartoon voiceovers. It's like half the time I have no idea what he's actually going on about, but it's so fun to just watch these scenes unfold in your very ears. Demented, skewed, and just an absurd amounts of fun. The next track, Weightlifting Lulu. So this is another really cool one. You get very low-end bass to open it all up before you get, I don't know, like Scooter, is that the guy? Like techno music of sorts, I feel. Like, this one confuses me, because at first it kind of sounds like techno night with improvised vocals from the local comedy troupe. And then someone finds a guitar and just starts, Captain Beefhearting all over it. And it's really weird, but very cool sounding, but trying to make sense of this one feels really impossible to me for some reason. What I can say, though, is, the sound palette is really interesting on this one, especially towards the end when you get the stuttering staccato of violin strings before it drops into a really weirdly lovely melody, just in time for a vocal refrain to just carry us right towards the end. A really weird shapeshift of a song, but very interesting, I think. And so the next track, Crafty Cheese. Drones, bouncing electronics, those old 50 cartoon soundtracks caught in a bunch of different effects. Yeah, of course that's what it feels like, but then residents never hang around in one particular place for long, do they, though? In this one, they keep changing the sound projections, and it's never doing anything you'd expect, though. And, it starts off all weird and wonky, then vocals come in, and especially with how the instrumentals sound, you think it's going to be like a lovely summery vibe, but when the vocals arrive, it's kind of like this deep, brooding, low-end grumble of sorts, And that is until towards midway you get these high-pitched ones towards the end. It becomes a weird conversation between these two cartoon characters talking about nature, I feel like. It's so weird. It gives you this weird sort of nostalgia vibe that you get from watching those old cartoons from the 50s. For me, I'm reminded so much of them. It reminds me of the ones we had recorded on VHS back when I was a really small child living in Ireland. We had all these weird analog television cartoons recorded on these videos that we didn't know what was going on in them. There was such weird fever dreams, but the details of it remind me so much of what the Residents present in their music thing. And it's so weird, but I just love how the Residents seem to have so much fun in creating such amazingly detailed music in the process of all this weird experimentation and presentation. Let's just swiftly move along, though. We get Hello Skinny, which, from what I am aware of, though, is actually a bit of a fan favourite among fans of the Residents. One of their most popular tracks, still performing it live, apparently, even as recent as a couple of years ago, I believe. So with this one, brass instruments and horns and a bouncing bass line that gives a kind of old film noir style. And then guess what? It's story time again. We're going to learn all about Skinny, who is a very interesting character indeed. At least, I think characters like this are very interesting because bands like the Residents, and the Residents themselves, of course, in this situation, are just so good at making weird, cartoonish characters seem so fascinating in their music. The way in which the Residents, just affects his voice like a voiceover artist, makes for these really fascinating pieces of prose that are sort of embedded into these really weird song structures. And you can really envision the characters and their locations just being elevated by the vibes being presented by the music as well. And I love, though, how, just to throw this one more further off course, though, at the end you kind of get a vocal harmony singing what I believe is just Hello Dolly, which is all hanging sustained on the final note for a terrifyingly long time. It's so weird and twisted when that happens, but there's such a fascinating way to end the track, I feel. Any case, no time to lose. It's time for your next favourite detective show, The Electrocutioner. A character whose name says it all, I guess, isn't it? And this one has another one of those weird late-night television vibes, you know, kind of like an 80s vibe of bright colours, car chases, and just nonsense happening all around you. And it becomes all the more so when you get the repeated phrasing and the collapsing guitar solo that truly just seems to not care about anything going on here. To which the keyboard or the sampler just starts to agree with and just devolves into nonsense as well, turning it into this horrible caustic noise before Dro just pulls us into this really weird medieval Baroque setting all of a sudden. It's kind of like the television channel just started breaking and glitching in the middle of this 80s cop show, and then in the end you just give up, change the channel to the History Channel, and here we've got this medieval Baroque session. At least that channel's working. A final folksy dance around the maypole to just close off the entire album, essentially. It's so peculiar how it ends everything that way, but really interesting and fascinating as well, I have to say. And so with that, we have actually come to the end of Duck Stabs, Buster and Glenn. Well, I have to say, I am really glad we had time to check this one out. I'm really glad the randomizers just spun this one out, because I really like everything I've heard from the Residents, you know. Like I said, they are a band I feel like I have to be in a specific mood for, you know. Their vibes are so weird and distorted, and also incredibly fun and entertaining. I find that I have to be feeling in a kind of silly mood to want to sit down and listen to them, which I guess doesn't come up as often as should have, which is kind of a shame, but it is what it is. However, I'm glad to have had the time to listen to Duck Stab and Buster Glenn, because this was so entertaining to hear and just hilarious to me. Like, it's so funny, and yet it's so dark and macabre at times as well, but just so entertaining. Like, it's just like channel hopping on a Saturday morning, I find, just trying to find cartoons to watch, watching a mix of your old favourites and ones you've just never heard before. You know, some comprehensible, and some just these incredibly weird fever dreams where you wonder what the hell were the creators on when they came up with this stuff, right? But alongside all that confusion and bafflement, I do find myself so thoroughly entertained by the Residents. Even when it gets all dark and twisted, it's still some of the most fun music I've actually come across, I feel. And what I love as well about the Residents, it's weird, but it's entertaining weird, right? Stuff like this really marvels in how strange and unusual it can be, and I think the Residents have just perfectly nailed capturing that aesthetic of just, you know, wonderment in experimentation and bizarre sounds, right? And so, with that, we'll be coming to the end of our episode of Weird Music then. A huge thanks to Wireless Fiction 8636 suggestion for Duck Stab. I'm sorry it took over a year to get your selection, but got there thanks to the randomizer. And to be fair, I'm really glad we did cover it eventually, because, you know, Residents are just so much fun to listen to, and definitely worthy of the badge of weird when it comes to their music, you know. I do love how, you know, it's successfully strange and catchy at times, but also so incredibly bizarre and weird. So yeah, if you want to suggest something for the randomizer, then by all means, let me know in the comments. I will add it on. If it comes up, and we will give it a review at some point. For now though, I would like to thank you for watching today's episode of Weird Music. I wish you all the best, take care, and bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.
She could be a little piece of sandy blown.